all, welcome to the Web Application Pen Testing course at Pentester Academy. Now in this video, we will continue with web shells and look at how we can leverage interpreters on the system such as Python, PHP, etc. to get a shell on the box. Now what is the problem statement here in comparison to the previous video? Now, if you remember, in the last video on web shells, we looked at using Netcat-based reverse shells. Now, on many of the latest Ubuntu server software, you will actually see that Netcat is really a stripped down version of Netcat, which does not support the -e option, which means your reverse connect shell will no longer work. And you can go ahead and check that out in your Ubuntu server. If you remember, this is the same Ubuntu server we created for earlier demos. And if you do a netcat -h, you would see a ton of options, but you would not see the -e option. And if you actually try the -e option, let's say, you would actually find that it would give you an error saying invalid -e option, right? Simply because this is the NC from Netcat OpenBSD and optional version blah blah is available, which if you install, your problems would be solved. But as a pen tester, unfortunately, you would not be able to do that, right? Because the web server would be running as www data, which pretty much means that you would not be able to install packages. And if there is no write access, you would not even be able to upload totally compiled versions. So what do we do in such a case? Now the answer lies in the fact that almost all Linux systems now have interpreters such as Python, PHP, Perl, Bash, etc. And the idea is to see if we can use these to our advantage to get a reverse shell. Now let me illustrate what I mean. Now 1.20 is the IP address of my Ubuntu machine, which I have set up, and watch previous videos in case you haven't set it up already. It's just a plain Ubuntu server system. And this contains the list.php, which again we've used in a previous video. Now, the problem with this system, of course, is that Netcat does not support the -e option. So now, how do we use, let's say, a Python interpreter on the system to get a reverse shell? So let me go through the process. Now, apart from creating a Python script, you can also invoke a Python command directly. So let's say if you want to print hello world, we could go ahead and invoke Python and really pass it the command which we had, and it prints hello world. Now the best part is if we copy this out, if we copy this out, go back in here, and we can even verify where Python is. So let's say, where is Python? Clearly see its user bin Python 2.7 blah blah blah, which means Python is definitely present on the system. Similarly, you can check for PHP, check for Perl, right? And all of these can be used. So now going back, if I were to directly paste my Python script in here, if you notice, it gets executed and the hello world gets appended at the very bottom, right? Now, what we are really going to do is go ahead now, include the entire script to create a reverse connect shell, which will connect back to us and go ahead and execute bin bash on the server, right? Now, the best article I've seen on this is written by Mark Baggett and is on the Paul.com website. I'd highly recommend going to Paul.com They have tons of fantastic articles on all of these little tips and tricks for pen testing, so highly recommended. Now, pretty much what he's done here is that he's gone ahead and written the whole Python script, right? The reverse shell, and then used pipes to go ahead and basically run the system commands using Python, right? As you can see, so we've imported socket, we've imported subprocess, we create the socket, we connect. Now this IP address and port number would have to be changed by us depending on what we use. And after that, he basically has a subprocess.p open in which he goes ahead and gives the command and feeds the output back. Now there are other such reverse shells possible as well, and if you go to pentestmonkey.net, you would find possibilities with Bash, Perl, Python, right? And in this case, the one in here actually goes ahead and creates bin.sh, with which it goes ahead and pipes the commands inside. Now you have PHP, Ruby, and all of that stuff, and our familiar Netcat and a ton of others, right? Highly recommend reading this link as well. Both of them are present in the PDF. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this article from Mark Baggett, and I'm just going to use the Python script from over here to do our task. So let me just go ahead and copy this script out. So he uses the exec call, so as to accommodate multi-lines and all of that stuff. If you're a Python programmer, you can read more about it. And all I'm doing is pretty much just copying this whole thing out and taking it out in here. Let's just paste it. Okay. Now, one of the things, of course, we'll do is change the port numbers and the IP address. So I'm going to make 9000 as 10,000 and change the IP address to be 192.168.1.10. You can look at our Python course if you're interested about more details of the script. We talk about subprocess, socket creation, and all of that in there. So I'm not going to really make this a Python tutorial. And if you're not too keen, well, you can use many of these one-line reverse connect shells from PentestMonkey. Okay, so let me start my listener. I can just use Netcat for that purpose. Port 10,000, start listening, and go ahead and execute this. If you notice, it's executed. And if we go to our listener, we've already got a connection, right? Fantastic. Let's restart our listener. Let's go back in there, kill this. Now, what we would like to do is base64 encode this before sending this to the server. So for this, let me quickly go ahead and copy this whole thing out. I'm just going to copy this, open a Python script, a Python shell, and just call this, let's say, shell equals, and then paste this whole thing in there, and then use encode, which you used in previous videos, and tell it to do a base64 encoding. Right, and now if you look at shell, you would find a base64 encoded string. Now the way in which we can recover our previous script is by doing a decode, again with base64 as the option, and you would find that we get back our script. Now what we really want to do is basically go ahead and use the following, so you can get out of this. And if you look in here, all we basically need is Python -c exec, and in here we will actually have our base64 encoded string. which we can copy out, paste it in here, and then we can apply the decode to it using base64 as the option. Just hope I've taken care of all the brackets, sorry, all the quotes and double quotes, and then we can go ahead and run this. If it was perfectly done, we get our reverse shell as before, right? Fantastic. So let's start the listener again. And now this beautiful little shell in here is waiting for us to be reused. So we could just copy this out, go back to our application, remove this part, paste it in, hit an enter, and if you notice, it basically goes into the whole connecting state. But if we look at our netcat listener, we already have a prompt on the system, right? There you go. So this is how, in case you do not have utilities like netcat, you can still exploit, let's say, a command injection and go ahead and execute a Python script on the remote system to give you back a reverse shell, right? So check out this entire article. I'd highly recommend using this article. And at the bottom, Mark has also given examples about how you can use this with MSF payload, package payloads inside, and do a ton of interesting stuff. It's definitely worth a read. And then definitely go down to Pentest Monkey and try out these other examples as well, right? The links to all of these are there in your PDF, so you can just click and have a look. And I would highly recommend, reading Paul.com's article and even subscribing to their podcast, because they have a ton of informative stuff which they put out. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video on Pentester Academy. If you have, we would really appreciate if you can recommend us to your friends and colleagues in the InfoSec community. Thank you.